to be majority, more than 50% non-white in about 40 years. So the U.S. needs to accommodate itself to racial reality in the world, racial reality at home. Equal protection means that all the races have an opportunity not only to take a test, let's say an LSAT test, but to participate in the fruits and benefits of the society. So all races have, under that interpretation of equal protection, an equal shot at being lawyers or doctors or graduates of college, whatever they please. Not only is this demographic reality, but for most people in the U.S., this is understandable and acceptable. The list of institutions which filed briefs in support of the Michigan policy with respect to affirmative action in the Rudder case, that list runs on endlessly. There are dozens and dozens of groups that saw fit to put in a brief saying, we support moderate affirmative action. And to give you an example of who some of those people were, the U.S. government filed a brief on behalf of affirmative action. Not just the U.S. government, the U.S. Army filed a brief in favor of affirmative action. 21 states, including this one, filed a brief in favor of affirmative action. Associations of medical schools filed a brief in favor of affirmative action. And the LSAC, which is a law school sort of a group that deals with law school issues, the LSAC and the LSAT, the LSAC filed a brief in favor of affirmative action. A collection of law deans filed a brief in favor of affirmative action. General Motors, IBM, DuPont, 65 other leading major American businesses filed briefs in favor of affirmative action. The AFL-CIO and the NEA filed briefs in favor of affirmative action. Add all that up, and there's an awful lot of support for affirmative action. There's got to be a reason for all of that, and that reason is that affirmative action succeeds. And I'll defer that answer to what I get to say, now that I truly move my time.
As popular as he is, though, let me take issue with him. Professor Church says that the Constitution is obscure and ambiguous on this point. Well, he doesn't like the Constitution. Let me read Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which is the statute that was at issue in Baki. No person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. If a college or a university treats people differently when they apply based on skin color or national origin, they are violating Title VI. The Supreme Court simply read that language out of law. What Justice O'Connor said in the Brewer case was not that, well, let's fight for another 25 years and see where we are then. She said that she expected the use of racial preferences to end after 25 years. Now, Professor Church talked a lot about the popularity of affirmative action. He mentioned all the briefs that were filed in the Rats and Bruder cases, the University of Michigan cases. Well, the U.S. brief that he filed said what the University of Michigan was doing was unconstitutional in both Bruder and Rats. The U.S. Army did not file a brief in Bruder case. The U.S. Army is part of the U.S. government. The brief that was filed was on behalf of some retired Army officers. It did not speak for the United States Army. It's true that corporate America has bought into this. I won't discuss their motives in doing so. I don't think that they're noble. Labor unions have bought into it. Media has bought into it. All these different groups were arrayed against the principle of colorblind equal opportunity in Michigan and in favor of the continued use of racial and ethnic preferences in Michigan when it was put to a vote of the people in Michigan. Michigan's not a red state. A ballot initiative banning government preferences based on race and ethnicity and sex passed overwhelmingly in Michigan. I don't think that this kind of discrimination is popular. I don't think that the kind of discrimination that we're seeing now at a lot of universities, and that includes this one, can be characterized as moderate. The studies that we released today make the case that it is anything but moderate. Now, there is one point, though, of agreement that I have with Professor Church. I'm going to come to that in a second, but set it up a little bit here first. He is, he suggests that, well, this is an issue, maybe we should leave it to the states, maybe we should leave it to the legislatures. The reason we don't do that is because if we've learned anything over American history, it's that issues of race and ethnicity, and when it's okay to engage in racial and ethnic discrimination, are not very usefully left to state and local governments. They engage in a lot of discrimination for bad reasons. This is a national issue. And this is the point where, I agree with Professor Church, but I agree with him on the facts, but I draw a very different conclusion. It is true, as I said before, that America is becoming increasingly multi-ethnic and multiracial. It's always been that way. It's becoming increasingly. Over 1 in 4 Americans now say they are something other than simply white. It's similar to the statistic that Professor Church said. Indeed, African Americans are no longer the largest minority. Latinos are. And blacks and whites are the slowest growing populations in the United States. Just about all these numbers I'm giving to you from off the U.S. Census website. Since the last census, the Latino population has grown by 43%. And the Asian population has grown even faster. The black population has grown by only 12.3%, and the white population by only 6%. And the number of Americans who identify themselves as belonging to 2 or more races has grown by 32%. Now, I look at those numbers, and I conclude that they show not that we need to reinvigorate policies that pick winners and losers in the United States on the basis of skin color and national origin. I look at those numbers and conclude that that is a recipe for disaster in a country like the United States if we were all to get along with one another. Increasingly, what we're seeing at places like the University of Michigan, or the University of Wisconsin, and the University of Michigan, and universities all over the country, is not discrimination where whites are displaced, or white applicant is displaced by a black applicant, but discrimination where an Asian American is displaced by a Latino American. Now, what is the justification for that? It is simply divisive and unfair, and it should stop. Thank you.
Let me mostly run through some positive, not particularly evil, reasons in favor of affirmative action. I can't resist making one rebuttal point, which is it may be that the Supreme Court, as was pointed out, didn't refer to statutory sources in the Dred case. But it doesn't follow that the statutory sources therefore dominate. If the Supreme Court ignores it, then the supreme law of the United States is that it's ignored. The reality is that the court did not respond to that argument. But why should we have affirmative action? Never mind the legalisms. Certainly one reason is an obvious reason. It's an affirmative, the affirmative sign of the benefits and the policies of racial integration. And for a long time, of course, we didn't have racial integration in the United States. It took about 80 years for the U.S. to abolish race-based slavery. It took about 80 more for the U.S. to abolish official segregation based on race. And it's taken 60 more to get where we are today, or a total of 220 years. We're not there yet. We're not fully integrated in the U.S. Why do we want integration? We went on for weeks on why we want integration in the U.S. Above all, we want the races to understand each other. We want the races to mix together in the U.S. because together we may succeed. Divided, we will not succeed. Integration, particularly in the classroom, is stimulating. Courts have sometimes recognized it. It's energizing. It's much more interesting to teach a class that's of mixed race than when there's only one race if the issues for the class imparted or impinged on racial factors. We can't afford to have a permanent underclass in the U.S. Can't afford it in any circumstances, in particular. Can't afford it if it's race-based. Which means that we have to have lawyers and doctors, etc., political figures, drawn from all the races. Which means they have to get into all the law schools in order to prepare for that sort of career. And this was a point explicitly made by the court in Michigan. So we can't wait forever to achieve the glacial path toward full racial equality in the U.S. 220 years is enough. And we need to jumpstart that process by creating a middle class, a powerful group of people who are not merely Europeans in the U.S. If we have strictly test-based criteria for getting into institutions like law school, we will not achieve integration in the immediate future. Over time, no doubt we will, because